Greetings. My name is Dr. Cindy Brannon, and this is an audio class talking about the holy darkness. As a witch, as a spiritual seeker, as someone having this experience of this incarnation, for me, the darkness is home. And that witchcraft is of the darkness. Witchcraft is primal. Witchcraft is about nourishment. Witchcraft is about blood and dirt and all these things. That is witchcraft. Witchcraft is fundamentally of the shadows. We live in a curious time when the old societal structures are beginning to crumble and fall. And it is because we are at this crossroads, the civilization level crossroads that we're at, that there has been space created as it cracks, as the crossroads, the buildings that used to surround our civilization, these structures are falling down. As these things happen, our whole society is at this crossroads. And so previously, our society, if you think of the Wheel of Time, Hecate's Wheel of Time, and you think like collectively as a society, we were at one place in this wheel. And in this wheel, we were at the place where there was no space for the holy darkness of witchcraft to permeate the dominant culture. And I'm not talking about like some hocus pocus, shit your focus, light witchcraft or paganism or any of those things. I am talking about the traditional medicine woman, the traditional healer, the traditional ancient witch who healed, who had witchcraft as medicine. Not religion as we think of it today, this narrow dogmatic bullshit of that Christianity has become. Not that. The darkness that was the healer going out late at night to tend to the feverish child. The darkness that is the womb and the child emerging into life from it. The darkness of the safety of night, where witches would gather and find refuge. The darkness of the witch's apothecary, where our sacred medicines are kept out of the harsh light that decomposes them. And that the traditional witch, the medicine person, woman, healer, man, cunning folk, that we too decompose in the light, breaking down, burning, and that we return to the darkness, the womb, Hecate's cave, the underworld, to find our nourishment. This is why the darkness is sacred to witchcraft. And that darkness, that underworld, Hecate's cave, the very heart of the underworld, the very center of her wheel, the strophalos, is the nourishment. And think of that strophalos as that serpent of life, the umbilical cord that connects us to the mother and nourishes us. And it is always to the darkness, to the womb, that we return. For the grave is just the womb. And that is why the darkness is sacred to witches. And for those of us who are Hecate's chosen, we are essential to the fabric of the universe. It is through our ability to be of the darkness and offer healing for those in the darkness that we hold together the world. We have always existed, and in times of great turmoil and change in civilization, in villages and towns, we are often called forward, sometimes into the light, but always at the fringe and in the shadows that we are called forward, because it is our presence on this planet that is woven in, that is required now more than ever. So that is why the holy darkness is so important, and why those of us who are of the holy darkness, the witches, Hecate's witches, are vital to the fabric of the universe, and why we are necessary now more than ever. So Hecate's blessings of dark deepness of the shadows to you, that it is in the shadows where our eternal persistent torchlight is found. And herein, as we travel the wheel of the year, we find ourselves in the darker times, when the days are short and the night is long. It is a period of release, of renewal, retrieval, and ultimately rebirth as the wheel turns. This is where we are. The Holy Darkness cycle was given to me by our mother a few years ago now. And each year when we descend into autumn, I am called once more back to working on what was given to me. You know, this is Hekate calls us to always be the beautiful becomer. Our work is not always finished. Our work is ongoing. Witchcraft is about becoming. It is that nourishment that grows us and that we are never stagnant. It's when we get into the shadow energy where we get stuck, where we need to gestate and incubate as we heal. And even in that state of stuckness, we're growing. So the mother calls us never ever to be just complete. We are whole, but not complete. We are whole, but not perfect. That is who we are. That is our essentiality for the universe. So that while there are others out there who are like, I am exactly done and I don't need to learn and I don't need to grow and this is the rules and I'm going to follow them. If we didn't exist to show that there is a different way, think of how sorry the world would be. We are artists, creators, writers, healers, truth walkers of all shapes and varieties. And our example inspires others, and our work helps light the way. So it is every year that I return to the Holy Darkness cycle. There are 3 primary rituals of the Holy Darkness cycle. The release, the death walking ritual of release, the soul retrieval work, and also the rebirth ritual that comes at the end. For students who are in my mystery school, we go quite deep into this process, whether it's the Sacred Seven or the Mistai. If you are in the Open Circle Coven, we also do live rituals and go deeper, but not as deep as for those who are in the course. It's just because the levels of this work require support. So the deeper you're going into the work, it's more appropriate for you to be in a course so you are surrounded by a circle of support as you do this work. In the coven, we do offer quite a bit of support as well. If you are reading this as an independent practitioner who reads my blogs and subscribes to the newsletter, I offer you, a caveat to go in deep as you are comfortable going. My mission is to provide accessible content that is tailored for the receiver of the content. That is the mission that Hekate has given me. So there are 3 articles available on Pathos, and there is a guide that you can purchase for a couple of bucks on the Holy Darkness cycle if you're doing this on your own. Why is the process so integral to being a Hecatean witch, to practicing spiritual witchcraft, even if Hekate is not necessarily your primary goddess? She is the witch mother after all, so she is involved with all witches. We are all her chosen. Why is this so important? It's important to begin at the beginning. So this is why we begin with the release phase. And you can, do prior workings leading up to this. I've got an article that you can read, and in the Coven, there's an article that goes into this more that you can find. So why do we start with release? Because I want to talk about first, let's just ramp this up. We may have some shadow shit going on where we're feeling that we just want to jump to rebirth, just like, fuck all this shit. Give me rebirth. The process of contemplating, either through doing tarot readings or having someone like someone from Geology of the Soul do a reading for you to help you figure out what you need to release, is that it's junk food, and junk food nourishes the shadow. So we can get caught up in this miasma, which is what the ancients called it, right? So the miasma keeps us full. It's like always eating at fucking McDonald's, right? We might be full, but we're killing ourselves. The shadow loves this kind of drama, jealousy, emotional pain, hanging on to emotional pain. And it gets embedded in our bodies as physical pain. This is what feeds the shadow, but it doesn't ultimately nourish us, although it can make us full. That umbilical cord from Hekate, if we're always trashing ourselves with all this junk, that nourishment is not able to get to us. It's a block. So the release, the offering to Hekate of whatever is this junk we've been stuffing ourselves with, is the first step, because that lets that flow from the Hecatean umbilical cord start to come back into us and to nourish us. And this isn't like an instant process. It takes weeks and weeks to shift. Just like if you are changing how you eat your diet in your physical body, you got to remember, everything that happens to us on the physical level works the same on the spiritual level. So you think about it. If you've been eating a lot of crap and all of a sudden you stop, the effects of that nourishment aren't going to be really felt until you're into it for 4 to 6 weeks. You might initially start to feel better, but the sustained, prolonged changes take weeks usually to achieve. Now, we get some insta doses, like if you take some B vitamins, you might feel more energetic. And so when we start getting that, like part of the Hecatean umbilical nourishment is that we do kind of get like spiritual B vitamins. We get ergatas, energizer, like we get that energy, and it's like, holy shit, spiritual B vitamins work right away. And so we're feeling energized. But then the other thing that can happen as the toxins are cleaned out from our body is that we get very, very sick. I mean, this has certainly happened to me. Like if I start eating too much sugar, I have to keep my sugar fairly low, under 80 total grams a day, which is, if you haven't counted up how many grams of sugar you eat in a day, go and do it and see how quickly you get to 80. If I've been eating a lot of sugar, a lot of junk, which I rarely do, if I get into one of these tracks where I'm doing this quite often, then when I give it up, holy mother, do I get sick? I'll get a cold. I'll end up having to go to bed for a few days. It's a disaster when I get into this. So when you think about if you've been really in that place where you've been feeding your shadow, you've been in dysfunctional, messed up relationships, you've been not honoring your truth. You've been living like really this closeted life where you're just like performing for other people and you're following that imagined voice of others and you're just doing all this stuff. If you are totally in that space where your whole diet has been miasma, you need to purge. You need to get it out. Because what's the other thing that happens when you get into this space of, going from a bad diet to a healthy diet is that you purge all this stuff, right? Like you poop a lot. And so the release is that getting rid of that spiritual poop. Now, Hekate, traditionally from the ancients, was associated with this energy of release, the spiritual shit. And that she was well favored by the spiritual shit. So to the ancients, of course, this was known as miasma, and they would engage in rituals to cleanse themselves of miasma by transferring it onto a ritual animal that was subsequently sacrificed. So all the toxins were given to this ritual animal. And then the remains of the animal were left at the crossroads to Hekate as an offering that favored her. So it is in keeping with these practices that we start the holy darkness by releasing, the ritual sacrifice, by getting the shit out of ourselves, by cleansing ourselves of the miasma. So this is why we begin there. Now, what happens, of course, like I already mentioned about diet, is like once you release, there is a period of adjustment till you get used to being well nourished. So this is the period that you want to really start journaling, writing, doing your daily tarot practice, doing your daily meditation and yoga, to get into that, or ecstatic dance, whatever it is that really is your witch's hour power, building that practice so you are welcoming in all that nourishment. It is through our practice of spiritual witchcraft that the nourishment comes in. I mean, of course, it can happen spontaneously, but we want that sustained nourishment. It's like there's that rush when we have been starved of nourishment that we just want to gorge ourselves, at a buffet. We were like Hecate's feast. It's like, give me it all now. I want all the witchcraft. But what happens if you've ever done this, you get even sicker and you can't absorb the nourishment. So this is why sustained practice through the witch's hour of power is the way the nourishment comes in. Little bites of bravery, little bites of standing in your power, learning about the botanicals one at a time, little bites of pharmakeia, taking from the nourishment offered from the mother's cord in small bites that can be sustained and that will ultimately lead to our true healing. This is medicine, and we are taking the medicine in doses. And this reminds me of something that you may be familiar with, which is how birth control pills work, right? So birth control pills don't work if you take them all at once. Antibiotics don't work if you take them all at once. This is why we take bites. We take doses of nourishment doses of our medicine and not the whole damn thing. Because when we get into like, I want the whole damn thing, I want the whole damn thing, we're risking getting ourselves even sicker, because this is why, I've got that article that y'all can read on spiritual upgrades. The one thing that you need to avoid is the spiritual bypassing. Getting way too up or going way too deep, way too quickly. And this is why we want to pace the cycle out by several weeks. The second part of the cycle is soul retrieval. And I've been doing soul retrieval work for years now. And there is a necessity of support for soul retrieval. It is entirely possible for you to do soul retrieval work as a sovereign practitioner if you have done the release, established nourishment, and have a healthy physical body and spiritual body going into it. If you've done none of that, then yeah, definitely you need the one-on-one support of a counselor, a shaman, a witch, a healer who can guide you through the process, because it's going to be fucking brutal when you come out. So you want to do this on your own? Take this space. So if you do the release in November, and then you're ready for the soul retriever roughly in February, I would say. So what is soul retrieval? Soul retrieval is those missing pieces of our truth that were relinquished out of necessity to survive. So always keeping in mind that although we don't want to feed the shadow too much, we don't want the shadow like gorged and taking up all the space in our body, we want the shadow to be our partner, but we are more powerful than the shadow. So what happens during difficult times in our lives is that our true self rests as protection, or if it's wounded, it needs to recover. And the shadow comes to the forefront. Now, what can happen in this dance between shadow and self is that pieces of our truth, our soul, take flight because there is no space within our being for them to be active at that time. When we are ready, nourished, strong, we can go back and do kairos magic, time travel magic, back to where we lost the piece and retrieve it. And if you're doing this on your own, a timeline of your life is an amazing exercise to prepare you for soul retrieval, so that you will consciously in your corporeal being know where it's likely you need to time travel to in order to get those missing pieces back. It's interesting because every year when we do the Holy Darkness cycle, I go through the cycle myself, and it is the profound cycle of my year because we're never done with our wholeness. We are always becoming. We are whole yet becoming more and more and more. So this year, very much, I've been doing some deep untangling of issues I have around romantic relationships. And certain memories, as I go in very intentionally to this releasing period, knowing that my focus is on releasing aspects of toxic masculinity that are embedded within my body, spirit, and mind as a result of romantic relationships. As I go deeper into this work than I have been able to previously, certain memories will be, I don't mean triggered in this sense of like it's painful, because my emotional pain associated with these things is long gone. It's like deep kind of psychic, spiritual, embedded bodily pain that I'm dealing with now. And certain memories will naturally percolate to my conscious mind that are signs, lights from Hekate, keys right? Be like, oh yeah, that thing happened. And I just had this absolutely that's where I need to go back and get a piece of my soul. So it's like as you're getting ready for the release, think about what you're releasing. There's also probably missing pieces there that you're going to go back and get. So let's release the toxic, nourish ourselves, and go back for the missing pieces when we're ready. So the final section, of course, is rebirth, which if we're following like the November, February-ish cycle would be done around May. So after you go through the retrieval process, again, it's about nourishment. It's about, because you're bringing all of your whole pieces in, and you need to sustain those daily practices in your hour of power to mend all that back together. Like if you just kind of come all back together, whoosh, and you're not gluing it back together through that nourishment, then those pieces are just going to fucking fall off again. I'm sorry, this is true. This is a sustained healing empowerment process. This is sustained medicine. And that glue that heals those scars, that medicine is the sustained practice. One of my sustained practices these days is drinking more water. So I'm taking little water breaks because it is important to nourish the body and not be dehydrated. Oh, so rebirth, beautiful. Speaking of water. So rebirth is the completion of the holy darkness, the underworld cycle. So rebirth is like baptism into Hecate's cauldron, where finally what happens is, we've achieved wholeness, we've released, we're in a good place. And what happens when we are in this good place and our scars are our strength and we're being nourished is that we enter that cauldron in an amazing place where all of the remaining residual toxicity and shadow energy and the voice of others, I shouldn't say shadow energy, shadow dominance, because we want to be integrated into wholeness with our truth and our shadow. And that is what happens in rebirth in Hecate's cauldron, where her beautiful, beautiful pharmacoi, the botanicals, boil us down to our essence. And in true alchemical fashion, we are built into what we always were, healed and whole. So that is a short description of the holy darkness. You can find out more in the coven or in the courses or by checking out my Pathos Pagan blog. On the website, you'll see, like I said, there's just for a couple of bucks, there's that holy darkness guide if you're doing this on your own. And I just want to close by saying that this is not a one and done process. That healing and medicine, and again, you think our medicine is not about waiting till what's broken to fix it. It is about the annual descent into the underworld so that we can become more true, more powerful. We are becoming. It is about that. So it's not, don't rush into this. Do what you can. Rest when you need to. See yourself as your own healer. Following those torches of Hekate, descending deeper through the entrance of the underworld with release into the outer chamber of retrieval and the deepest chamber for rebirth in her cauldron, and then emerging out the other side. I know that Hekate will guide you, that your allies will comfort you, and that you can connect with me. If you're in the courses, you've got your mentors, You've got a circle of support around you, and you are the agent of your own medicine. This work is within you to do, and you have everything already that you need to do it. Don't fuss so much about those micro details. Follow your intuition, listen to Hecate's voice, sit and grow comfortable with your shadow, but do not let them run the show, but do so out of loving kindness and integrity, not hatred. Write yourself a love letter if you need to. Do whatever you need to do in order to understand your own sacred darkness and to walk through this astral, deep, chthonic period with grace and dignity and passion. Blessings, deepest, darkest blessings.